No, this isn't clickbait. I actually paid 250 euros to learn this mixing trick, but also a lot more. So let's dive into it. But before we dive into the actual project and the actual trick, I want to tell you a little bit of backstory behind the trick, how I discovered it. As many of you know, I've been working on an album. I've talked about that on Discord a lot, link in the description. But the album, I've gotten to the point where all the ideas were done and I did like a preliminary master on them. So I could finalize all of the tracks and do one more listen. So I decided to do that in collaboration with a studio. It's a very big studio here in Italy, and together we spent the whole afternoon talking about my music, talking about things that I could do better. And one of the main takeaways of that was to use this trick. So let's dive into it. Alright, so here we have a project with a kick and a bass and some lead sounds. I'll quickly let you listen to the project. One thing of note here is that when you look at these different lead sounds, there's a lot of bridging going on. So a lot of ambience is playing here, which basically bridges the sound, as you can see, from this part playing to where, for example, lead 3 is playing, and then lead 3 to lead 4. That whole part is being bridged using the delay and reverb. And here again, we're bridging this whole part. Here it's a little bit different because there's this other lead on top of it, but you can still think of it as this part, this lead bridging this up until this lead, and then this also kind of bridging, making sure that there's something interesting happening there at all times. That's basically what we mean with bridging, so that it's not just the kick and bass playing. So I'll let you hear that first. So that's the example we have. So one thing of note is that the delays and the reverbs here, which are doing a lot of this bridging, which I talked about, the ambience, for each one it's different. So I have a different delay and reverb setup for each of the lead sounds here. You can see different settings. I'm not going to go over the exact settings because they're not important. But what you need to know is that they're specifically tailored for each sound. And this is how I like to work all the time. So I would have inserts of delays here. As you can see, we have a delay and a reverb. And as you can see, we have that on every track, a delay and a reverb, and another delay and a reverb. And they were specifically tailored to the sound of the sound that's playing on that track. And this works, but there's a few things that could be done better. For example, you don't have complete liberty over how you work with the delay and the reverb. So what does that mean? There's a few setups that you just cannot do with simple inserts. You would need to use something like the audio effect rack. So as an example, let's say you want to take this sound here and apply the reverb only to the delayed signal. There's no way to actually do that in here. You cannot output the delay to a different, or the wet signal to a different track or something like that. You would need to do that with an audio effect rack, which would become really messy in a project. You would have to open up, audio effect racks inside here, look at the different chains, and that's just a little bit of a mess, and I don't like working that way. So a way to achieve this effect is using return tracks. So for now I've bypassed this delay and reverb here, and we're going to add another return track here, which I'm going to make green, please, and then I'll call this delay plus verb. Let's give the capital letter so it's nicely organized. And we're just going to add let's first add a reverb here, just a simple one. And then we'll add our echo, which is going to act as a delay. Now the important thing is that I set the delay to 100% wet, because we don't want any of the dry signal, as we said before, to affect the reverb. So this is only going to be wet signal from the delay. And now I'm going to just set it up so it's a little bit better for this particular sound, something like this, a little bit more stereo, a little bit more feedback. And what we can do now is just send this completely to that return track. What this will do is it will split up the audio here. So imagine this audio playing, going through all the effects, and then it comes here towards the end of the chain. and then in that case, it gets split up, and one of the tracks is reduced by 16 decibels and is then output to the lead sound, which goes through my routing groups and my output, and then to my master, which is because I have a very complex setup. But basically, one is going to go through the mixer here and then goes to the output and to the master channel. And the second one is actually going to go, I believe it's going to even bypass the mixer, but that's something I should look up. But it's going to go to this track here and then going through all of these effects. So it will be a completely delayed, it will only be the wet of the delay, and then there will be reverb applied to that delay. Now you can set the reverb to 100% as well, then you won't hear the dry delay sound, which is a little bit of a weird term to say because delay sounds are usually wet sounds. But the dry delay, we mean all the delay that isn't reverb, that doesn't have any reverb signal on that. So in this case, we want to have both some dry delay as well as some reverb on the delay. So now we have a sound that sounds like this. You can hear the initial is dry and then it becomes wet in terms of the reverb again. Now this is very nice in a small project like this, but it's not a scalable solution, with which I mean once you apply this effect, let's say 10 times, you're gonna have 10 different return tracks, because as I said, you want each delay and each reverb to tailor to the specific sound, at least for me. There might be some exceptions, you might be able to combine a few together, but generally speaking, if you want complete control over your reverb, each delay and each reverb has its own sound. There are some cases, for example, if you're not working in sidetrans, if you're trying to get a realistic like room sound for your recordings, then generally speaking you use the same delay and reverb on many different tracks. So in that case, a return track is a good option to use that, because then you will have very few return tracks. But let's say you have 15 sounds even that you want to apply this technique on. You would need to have 15 return tracks, and then because you cannot really organize return tracks in Ableton, like if I place another return track here, I don't believe I can move these around. As you can see, there's no organization. You would need to give these names, and then you would need to find the names with the names that you give above here, and it's just a bit of a mess. So I want to show you an even better way I found of doing this exact technique. So I'm going to add another audio track, which is basically going to act as a return track for only this track here. So I'm just going to pop it under here, and I'm going to color it differently. This is just to indicate that it's a return track and no audio is actually playing on the track itself. It's just capturing audio from a different track and outputting it. So that's again for organization purposes. That's just a bit better. And now we can just take input from lead 4, set it to in mode, so it will always play that sound. And I'm going to combine these two, and I'm going to set this to post effects. Now the reason for that is because here we have a mixer which is set to -16. We don't want this volume to affect the volume of this. We want the volume of this to come in basically at 0. Another thing you can do here, again for organization wise, is set this to 0 and the group to -16. What that will do is it will make this channel relative to this channel. So let's say we set this to -3. Now you have a situation where just this channel is 3 decibels lower than this channel in volume, if no effect is like changing the volume. Obviously, once you start adding, for example, a distortion to this, or a compressor, or just a gain knob, then it will obviously no longer be the case. But generally speaking, I try to go for an output of 0 decibels at the end of my chains. Or at least try to get as close to that as possible. So this is a very good indication of the relative volume between my delay and reverb, or any effect that I decide to put on this, and the dry signal. So now what we can do is we can just copy this over. So I'm going to take that off. I'm actually going to delete this so that it's no longer a mess here. And now as you can see, it's a lot cleaner. You don't have all these sliders here, which indicate the different return channels that you have. And it works the same way. So now if we listen to this, You can hear it's the same effect. But one of the big advantages is that it's grouped with the sound that you're applying it to. Which also means that, let's say you apply a frequency shifter to this, which you want to automate. You're going to have all the automation in the same group, right? So now here we have a sound, and even though we're basically using a return track, its automation that is applied on the return track is also going to show up within the confines of this group. I don't have to go look for a different tab down here, which in a big project is really a big benefit, not having to scroll around for different parts of the same sound. So now we have something that sounds like this. This is just to give you an example of what you can do with this. You can be very creative with this. Let's take another example. Let's do that lead 1 here, which is this big stab sound that I have. Let's say that I want to make this a little bit more stereo and I want to do some cool things to the side of it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 audio tracks here. And again, I'm going to color these and I'm going to group this all together. And for both of these, we're going to select the both of them, so we're editing both at the same time. And we're going to go with lead 1 and in post effects for both. Right, so now we have the right setup. Again, this to 0, and let's set the group to -12. Again, for the relative volumes. And for now, I will just name this like side, and this will be mid. Now, what this is going to do is it allows us to parallelly process the side channel and the mid channel of this sound together. So to do that, we need to isolate the mid and the side. Now, this is a little bit of a weird way of doing this, but one thing you can do is just set up a, let's say, a low pass filter on the side here. And we'll set this to as steep as it will go. And then here, we'll do the same for the mid. So this will be a low pass filter on the mid signal, which will just make sure that nothing comes through. I believe here, yeah, you can see there's no stuff happening down there. And now we can copy these both over. I'm going to copy it over to the side and to the mid. Again, we're going to set a dry wet of 100 on the delay. We do want some delay signal to come through, so I'm not going to change the wet. You could do that if you want it, again, to be fully wet, but for now we're not going to do that. And now I'm just going to turn down the mid a little bit and turn up the side a little bit. And what that will do is it will just take the ambient sounds and put it to the side a little bit more, make them a little bit more stereo, because obviously we're turning up the side volume of that. Why is this not taking inputs? Is this now completely mono? I believe that might be the case. So what you can do is put this behind there, because these will generate stereo, obviously. Yeah, now you can hear it's a lot more stereo. So now if we turn down the stereo here, you can hear it becomes a lot more mono. If you have headphones, you should hear a very difference of it becoming stereo and more mono. So that's something you can do. For now, we've just done ambience, but let's look at a different example here, which I'm going to apply on this track here. We have something like this. This is a very mono track as well, but it's just nice to switch it up and not have everything very stereo. So for this, we'll leave it mono, and to actually do something completely different with it, which can also be done with return tracks, which is actually often done with return tracks, and that is some parallel processing, like for example saturation. So let's take our saturator. Again, same setup. We'll check lead 3, post effects, set this to 0 and this to -15. I'm just going to turn this down a few decibels, because otherwise it might get a little bit too loud. And now there's a little bit of a problem, because we have this sound here and we want to take it through this parallel distortion, but there's a few effects that we don't want in there. For example, I don't want the delay and the reverb to get distorted. So what you can do with the delay and the reverb is just to add those to the group, which comes after this chain is taken from this sound here. So any effect that you want after on all of these things together, you can just put that on the group. So for example, let's say sidechain. Let's look at a sidechain if I have some. Yeah, let's take a sidechain. I can just add a sidechain to this group, and then it will also apply it to the reverb or anything that comes after it. That's something you can do here. For example, here the sidechain is on, apart from that it's not set up correctly, it is actually on only the dry signal, so it won't sidechain the wet signal. So for that to happen, you put it on the group like that, and it will be the same thing for this one. Just throw it on the group, and here I would need to set that up as well. So now we can set up our distortion the way we want to. Let's actually listen to that. And now let's say we like that, we can apply some stereo to that. Maybe if we do want a little bit of stereo for that, we can use the Haas effect, which I've shown many times, or not many times. I've shown that off mainly in my stereo tutorial. So I'm going to set the Haas effect. In this case, I'm going to set it around 50% dry wet, which will make it sound a little bit more comb filtery, but that's a cool sound that can be used. You can hear now we have a nice stereo distorted version of our sound, kind of layered in between the dry sound and everything that goes to the delay and the reverb and stuff like that. So I'm going to limit that to make sure again that this is a relative volume to this one. And now we have something that sounds like this. Whereas before it just sounded a little bit drier. So this is the technique that I wanted to show. I would like to see what you guys can come up with this technique. There's a lot of stuff that you can do. You can chain chains together. You can have, as I said, what I mean by chaining chains together is that you have one return track which goes into the next return track, which goes into the next return track. And there might be more crazy setups that you can do with this. You might be able to involve audio effect tracks and make it really, really crazy. So I'd love to see what you guys can come up with, and feel free to come in my Discord and actually show me maybe videos or examples or sounds that you made using this technique. And I would love to see, again, kind of see a little bit of discussion on these principles. But I hope that it can help you become a better mixer and be more creative with the way you apply effects to sounds. But that's going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe if you're new here. That way I know that you guys like this kind of content. It's really kind of the way for me to see what you guys like and like less is mainly the like button, but also the amount of subscribers that I get. So thanks for that. Thanks for all the support. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.